Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing good. You all are safe and healthy at your home. So I'm Mrs. Tatima Bashistha and we are meeting here for our social science class. We'll be taking up with the third part of the chapter Indian Constitution, a Revelation. Uh, if you can remember, we were talking about the Indian Constitution. Before we start into today's topic, I would like to give a very quick recap of what we have spoken about in our last class. So basically in our last class, we started the last two classes. We started the class with defining constitution. We knew what is a constitution, right? We got to know what is a law. Then we got to know that that for a smooth functioning of a nation, the laws are written down in the form in a document which is known as the constitution. And also we got to know about the importance of constitution, why it is required. We all know that had there been no laws or rules and regulations, then there will be chaos and disorder everywhere in a country. So therefore, so that there is smooth functioning, so that everywhere there is peace and there is proper functioning, the constitution has laid down certain laws. And then we got to know about the dowry system. We read about a case study where dowry system, we read about where this giving of property or money or any kind of presents the bride brings along with her during at the time of marriage. Because of this system was prevalent during ancient time, and because of that system, that dowry system, there still today we hear about domestic violence, deaths of daughter-in-laws, right? So that dowry was also prohibited, is now prohibited in India, but still we can see, if even if a law is there for the prohibition of dowry, we can see it is still practiced in many parts of the country. And then we learned about what is constitutional. Then we learned about the features of the Indian Constitution. That it is a federal. We have federalism. It's a parliamentary form of government. We also and we got to know there is separation of power. Our Indian Constitution, or our structure, is divided into three organs. The power is divided into three organs. That is the legislature, executive, and the judiciary. We also got to know about the important features of the of preamble, and we got to know what is a preamble. Preamble, as we know, it is an introduction to the ideals and objectives of the constitution. Before reading a book, we always have a preface, right? So similarly, constitution preamble is the introduction to our constitution. So before reading the constitution, we just it is an introductory document to the constitution. Then we got to know about the different features of preamble. That is, it is socialist, fraternity, equality. It talks about justice. All these are various features of the preamble. And also we learned about judicial review. We learned about how any kind of law that is passed, if that law is considered to be inconsistent, if that is not according to the when a law is passed, if that law hampers a certain community, all right, and then the Supreme Court or the High Court has the right to declare that law as unconstitutional. So this entire process is known as judicial review, all right. Then also we got to know about rule of law, where we understood that nobody is above law, nobody is superior of law, all right, and no matter whatever position a person holds, he or she will be always punishable under law. The same law will be applied for one and all. That is all about rule of law. And also we got to know about the makers of our Indian Constitution, right? We got to know how when our Indian there were freedom fighters who fought for independence from the colonial rule. Then how a constituent assembly was formed for drafting of the Indian Constitution, and how B.R. Ambedkar, he's also known as the father of the Indian Constitution, as because he was the chairman of the drafting committee. And then we got to know that there were around 300 members in that committee. To name a few: Sarojini Naidu, Jawaharlal Nehru. Then we have Maulana Azad, all these were, etc. These were few eminent members of who were the members of the Constituent Assembly. And these makers of the Constitution, were, while they made the Constitution, they always kept in mind that while framing a law, it should be always kept in mind that the law can be acceptable by all the people. We know that we live in a diverse country with multi-religion, multi-languages. So it is very much important that for the lawmakers at that point of time, that when they make a law, that they take into account the sentiments, and that they understand the needs of the people, all right? Because a law should not be made in such a way that it hurts the sentiment of a certain religious group or certain community or any other languages, right? So it has to be a very acceptable law. So that was all about in the last class. So in today's class, we will be completing just the last portion of the chapter. I'll just take you to the chapter. Yeah. So in today's class, we will be talking about constitutional amendment, law and dissent. And under law and dissent, there are two examples. Now, what is amendment? Amendment means to change something, all right? Now, what is constitutional amendment? Now, certain laws that are made, that some additions and subtraction can be made to a law, all right? It is always open for that. That process is known as amendment, right? When you bring certain change in an existing law, that means you're trying to change about, you are adding something or you are subtracting something from an existing law, that is known as constitutional amendment. India's constitution is always referred to as living document because of that. Why it is a living document? Because changes can be made with time. Now, what I am saying, suppose, as we know, our constitution was adopted in 1950, right? So from that, at that time, those laws were made, and till today's year, we have come a long way, right? So from that time to this time, with time, many changes have taken place. So according to the demands of the people, according to the modern changes, according to the sentiments and values of today's time, the laws can also keep on changing. You can keep on amending those laws, all right? So that is why our Indian constitution is known as a living document, where you can keep on making changes to it. And this process is known as constitutional amendment. Sometimes changes are required in the law to incorporate modern sentiments and values. As I said, as we keep on moving with time, you also need to incorporate or go on adding with the laws. The laws also keeps on changing. For example, an example is given here, the Hindu Secession Amendment Act. So when in bracket it is given amendment, always remember that is not the original one. Some changes has been made to it. Gives equal rights to daughters in their father's property. So earlier, daughters were not given any property rights, but through the Hindu Succession Amendment Act of 2005, now daughters can also have claim for their claim for right to property in the father's property. All right. New states also, and through this constitutional amendment, new states have also been formed. All right. So this is all about constitutional amendment. Now let's look into law and dissent. Law, now we understood law is always something do's and don'ts, some rules and regulation. Dissent means something when you disagree, refusal, all right? So law and dissent are always two sides of the same coin. Why is it so? If people agree to most of the laws made by the government, there will be times they will not agree. So say, if a law is passed, we are in a democratic country. Now, if a law is passed, it is not always mandatory. People have to accept it. People might reject it. People may disagree to it. So that is known as dissent. All right, people may show through their own ways that no, that we do not want this law. Take away this law. All right, like you saw recently. Because this one, this constitutional amendment like CAA, right? How much the country was in turmoil, there was curfew everywhere, closed down everywhere, there were killings everywhere, people were, lucky charges were there. Why? People were dissenting, people were not liking it, all right? The Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act that was passed, the people were not wanting to accept that law. That is why people were dissenting, all right? And because of that, they were rejecting to accept that. And dissent can take place in various forms. Now we saw in CAA the how in what forms the protest took place, right? There were, in fact, we reached a stage where there was curfew. Internet was curbed for everyone, right? So this is how this is what we mean by dissent. Dissent means refusal to conform to a particular authority. Dissent can sometimes bring change in society or political situation. So as I said, dissent means when you refuse to accept to a certain authority. All right. Now let us take a look of a few examples. Two examples are given here. One is Salt Satyagraha. I think you know that the Salt movement, the Dandi March. During the British rule, what happened? Mahatma Gandhi, we know, he was the father of the nation and he led our freedom struggle. He showed dissent against the British rule by starting the Salt Satyagraha. What was the Salt Satyagraha? He started the Salt March in 1930. Now, why he had to start this dissent? Why he had to dissent? Because the British made the rule that the Indians cannot make salt. All right. Rather, they will have to buy the salt that is imported by the British at a higher price. All right. So the Indians, they did not want to accept this. Why will you, like in our land only, you are not allowing us to make salt. Rather, you are taking more money for us. So they were not agreeing to accept that. So they dissented. So the movement was led by Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji started the Salt Satyagraha, a demonstration against the British by marching to the town of Dandi. So it was a Dandi march. The movement was still Dandi, and by going there, they started to make salt. They were breaking all the laws. There was also another civil disobedience movement where Mahatma Gandhi urged the people not to follow any kind of British rules. All right, to break all the unjust rules, the rules which were spent for oppressing the Indians, to not to follow any kind of rules. So that is how they showed their dissent. So this was Salt Satyagraha. The last example that talks about dissent is anti-Iraq movement. So this is a movement that took place in a village called Dubaganta, which is in Nellore district of in Andhra Pradesh. What happened there? This was a women movement. This was a movement started by the women. Now, why did they start this movement? They started the movement against the consumption of alcohol. All right, there was high consumption of alcohol in Dubaganta village of Nellore district in Andhra Pradesh. All right, so as we know, and how was this? And this alcohol was locally made, Iraq. All right, it was a locally made alcohol, and the male members used to consume a lot. Right, they used to consume a lot of this alcohol. Now they wanted, the women of Andhra Pradesh, they took up this movement because they wanted a ban on the sale of Arak. But the state government, they did not want to impose a ban. Why? Because alcohol brings them a lot of revenue to the state. They can earn a lot of huge revenue from the state. I think we knew that about in this lockdown only, right? When the lockdown period was going on, the first thing, the shop that was allowed to open was wine shops. Why? Because wine shops earn a lot of revenue to the state. So similar was the situation here. They were not willing to impose a ban on the sale of Arak. But however, finally the government had to give up. They had to accept their demand, and finally the sale of Arak was banned. So through this movement, it showed the women empowerment, how women strongly led a movement and they came out successful. And also it showed that how if against any harmful practice, if you raise a voice, it will bring out a fruitful result. So this is all about law and dissent. So in today's class, we covered a very small topic, that is constitutional amendment, and we talked about where changes can be made in an existing law, that is known as constitutional amendment. Then we got to learn about law and dissent. Disagreeing to a law is known as dissent, right? And we got to know, and we learned, so we read about two examples, that is the Salt Satyagraha and the anti-Iraq movement. All right, students, I hope this class was also equally useful as the other two classes. And with this, the chapter comes to an end here. If you have any doubts, please feel free to ask me. for till we meet in the next class. Till then, everyone take care, stay safe. Bye bye. Thank you.